This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
In December of 1984, the first Beverly Hills Cop movie released in theaters across America. Eddie Murphy plays a Detroit cop chasing down a lead all the way to Beverly Hills, California. His character, Axel Foley, is considered one of the greatest movie characters of all time. But what's possibly more iconic is the jacket that Axel wore in those movies, something that ultimately led to this week's guest somehow living in the Boston area, yet becoming a fan of my Detroit Lions.
Welcome to Fantasy Football Origin Stories, where each episode is a journey back in time to explore the unique experiences of some of the coolest and most influential people in the fantasy football industry. I'm your host, Arnie Chapman, also known as the Football History Dude. Now, I love fantasy football, and I want you to come along with me to explore the yesteryear of the armchair gridiron. So hop on board my DeLorean, and let's get this baby up to 88 miles per hour.
This time as we step with the DeLorean, the date is December 5th, 1984, and we're in Beverly Hills, California. We're going to watch that new movie that we've been talking about. The newest movie starring Eddie Murphy, Beverly Hills Cop. And when we're watching, we can't help but dig on that cool jacket that he's wearing. As maybe insignificant as it seems, this jacket is a linchpin moment for this week's guest. We'll get into that more in the episode, but let's just throw out some numbers out there for you. Because this guest might want to rethink his decision. Maybe he takes that DeLorean and goes back in time. Because geographically, this week's guest should be a Patriots fan. And since 1985, the year after the movie came out, and that upcoming season is when they lost to the Chicago Bears in the Super Bowl, getting trounced, but that's a whole nother story. We're going to count that year moving forward. So in that time frame, the Patriots would have 30 winning seasons, 11 Super Bowl appearances, winning 6 of them. The Detroit Lions, however, only 11 winning seasons. And let's just not do the math on how many Super Bowls that they made it to, let alone one. Because we all know what it is. Big, fat, goose egg 0. Let's just say this week's guest might have a few screws loose, but we all love him the same, because he is a lifelong Detroit Lions fan, and I personally love how he roots for Honolulu Blue and Silver every single Sunday, and this upcoming Thursday against the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau Field. Well, the time of this episode releasing, that's going to be tomorrow. And although we shouldn't listen to any fantasy football advice from a dude that made that kind of decision, maybe we should listen to somebody who is a loyal member of his family. He's a dad. In fact, he's the fantasy football dad, and he's committed to helping you win your fantasy football matchup each and every week. Again, this week's guest, the fantasy football dad, is Tom Ward, and we're going to share his fantasy football origin story here in a few minutes. But first, speaking of my Detroit Lions, let's get an update on the SHN Listener League provided by Tailgate Fantasy Sports. I put in Jahmyr Gibbs, Jared Goff, and Aiden Hutchinson. Gibbs, he actually disappointed a lot considering all the expectations with David Montgomery out, and they're all like, yeah, we're going to give him the rock more. Sure, they give him the rock, but they decided let's just take him straight up the middle, run him into that dude's butt, and then let him fall down, instead of getting him out in the open field a little bit more. But whatever. Sam Laporta had a great game, didn't have him in my lineup. Goff scored kind of middle of the pack, and Big Hutch led the way with 24.5 points. Considering the Lions had 7 sacks total for the game, yeah, I'd say that might have been a good idea. And that's just something for me to say that it's okay for you to put defensive players in your lineup over here on Tailgate Fantasy Sports. And if this is the first time you actually heard of Tailgate Fantasy Sports, it's pretty easy. You just pick 3 players from your team each week, so you always get to root for your hometown team. Of course, mine is the Detroit Lions. And that's the beauty of the Tailgate Fantasy, because we all know that a lot of times we don't get the players we want in our home leagues, because you know, if you're a good fantasy football player, you're not going to reach as far as you have to. The platform that we are using, again, is Tailgate Fantasy Sports. And if you want to join, you're welcome to do so for free over at sportshistorynetwork.com/tailgate. And over there, you can learn more about our network league, as well as a little bit about Tailgate Fantasy. Again, Tailgate Fantasy is a free-to-play, and it's the app that we're using for our listener league. Join today, even in the middle of the season. Head over to sportshistorynetwork.com/tailgate to learn more. And with that, let's get into this week's interview with the fantasy football dad, Tom Ward.
I'm picking up a little bit of an accent there. Are you from the Northeast somewhere?
I'm right outside Boston, so I don't hide it at all. When I first started doing the videos, I tried to hide it up for a while, and I'm like, you know what? This is it. So
yeah, no, I think you should lean into it. I mean, that's what makes you unique. I mean, is it one of those things where my first question I typically ask is like, what team are you loyal to? Is that like a dumb question then?
No,
or?
I'm actually not a Patriots fan. I'm a huge Detroit Lions fan. And Barry Sanders, grew up Barry Sanders. Megatron was my favorite player, like ever. And nice, love it.
Yeah, I show that coaster to everybody. That's awesome. That's your team. Why Barry Sanders? Well, I mean, Barry Sanders is obvious, but why the Lions?
Honestly, the original origin story is not that awesome when it comes to football. But when I was a kid, like I just wasn't into the Patriots, and I mean, I enjoyed the Brady era and everything. It was a lot of fun and stuff. Like I like the Patriots, but like I'm not one of those people. It's like you either love or hate them. Somewhere in the middle, there's me, you know. But when I was a kid, I was just trying to find a team to get into. And my grandfather was the main like male figure in my life, and he was a huge Chicago Bears fan. So what other better way to piss him off to be a Lions fan in the same division? My whole family's Patriots fans, but I was actually in the mall one time, and in the window of a store had the like the Axel Foley Detroit Lions jacket. You know that from like Beverly Hills Cop. And I saw that. I remember thinking it was the coolest thing. So I was like probably like 7 or 8. And I remember thinking, that's my team then. That's cool looking. That's my team. And I just committed based on that little thing. And it's just been ever since then all in. And obviously, like you just showed Barry Sanders and especially Calvin Johnson is like my all-time favorite player of all time. I loved watching him. Like I loved watching the wide receiver position beyond any other position. And he was just, I mean, it's a shame that he retired as young as he did, but he was amazing. But
I mean, the same thing for both of him and Barry and everything like that. But
good retirement.
It's one of. I mean, they just unveiled at the stadium. Unfortunately, they lost in that overtime game yesterday. Yeah. But they had the Barry Sanders statue. I got to check that out sometime.
Yeah, it looks. The detail is pretty crazy. How good it is. I was taking sitting there on Twitter or X. Whatever we're supposed to call it now. And, dad rules. I don't change what I call things. They can change it all they want, but it's Twitter to me. But I was closing up on the pictures of it. The detail is just crazy on it. So I would definitely love to go there sometime. But, so Lions, I mean, sports-wise, the rest of Boston teams. But football for me is Detroit, and I'm a giant Notre Dame Irish fan, so for college.
I mean, it's just interesting because normally when people are especially up there in the Northeast, there's a lot of Cowboys fans and stuff too, or then like or in your generation, maybe like because their dad was a Steelers fan growing up because of the 70s or something like that. And it's just, I don't really hear that displaced Detroit Lions fan. That might be the first on this show or my other show.
My kids are definitely going to have the story of my dad was a Detroit Lions fan, but for me, it was just that jacket in the window. And I just decided right then that's where I'm committing. And I tell them now, my front son, Brody, he's the only one that's not a Lions fan. He's a Miami Dolphins fan, but he's been for like a year. And I'm like, now you're stuck, man. Once you stay a whole season with your team, you don't get to bail on them. I don't like that you're a Dolphins fan, but you're staying a Dolphins fan. You don't quit now. So.
Yeah, especially up there. I mean, that's like turning into the new rivalry and everything. Well, I guess it's really going to be the Bills and the Dolphins in that division.
Yeah, the Patriots, they're still trying to make that Mac Jones thing work, so.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with all that. I didn't see the Sunday night game. I just saw like the results or the box score watching and all that kind of thing. So I mean, is their defense like I watched them against the Eagles, but are they really put together? I mean, it seemed like they shut the Dolphins down for a little bit, but it looked like they kind of jumped out to an early lead, or were they just milking the clock pretty much at the end?
And the defense is there. The offense is just, I mean, on top of not being really good, they're just the most boring offense to watch in the NFL right now. I mean, it's not, except for Ramondre. I mean, he's exciting to watch, but the rest of the offense, wide receivers, and I mean, Mac Jones is just so boring to watch. And you know what they're going to be right out of the gate, And me not being a giant Patriots fan, see it where all my friends and people who are Patriots fans are still like in denial. Like people at work and stuff are still talking about, the whole faith in Belichick thing, and I'm the guy over here saying like, I think it's time to move on from Bill, and that's sacrilegious to be saying around here, but I might be right.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I'm trying to get over the fact that like you're a Lions fan for so long, and you're over there. What was it like before? Like now, do you have the red zone or not red zone, but the NFL ticket so you can watch the games, or like how do you do that?
I do have the NFL ticket. Yeah, this is my first year having it. Prior to that, it was just trying to see them when they're on, and just like on YouTube TV, you can go to like just like the shortened version of the game the next day, but to try to get on like that, and I mean. I made it work, but it wasn't easy. But I just jumped on with a friend of mine the NFL ticket this year, and it's awesome. I love it because it's just I was getting to a point where I would watch Red Zone, but Red Zone to me was as much as I love fantasy, it's just exclusively for fantasy, and I felt like I was missing so much of the game, what was going on. And I feel like with the NFL ticket, you get to see everything that's happening, and even the next day you can watch like without the commercials and stuff. So I'll go through all the games real quick, but I just felt like even as far as being on Twitter and giving advice and stuff, when I was watching Red Zone, I was missing out on so much stuff besides like the scoring, which was fun for a couple of years. But now I feel like now that I'm back watching all the games, I'm giving my advice is coming more in depth like I started off being. Red Zone was such a cheat code for a while, but it really wasn't showing you everything that was happening on the field,
Yeah, I really liked. I mean, I had it for a little bit when I was in Texas, so I could watch my Lions and stuff like that. But then that whatever they call it, all 360 or all 22, the one where, like you said, without the commercials, without the in between the plays, it's like snap, 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 and you could watch them pretty quick that way. So that's actually how I found going back to the whole, preseason doesn't matter, but maybe some of the individual plays do. I just remember writing down Kamara on a random punt, and I talk about this on the podcast a lot. On week 3 of his rookie season, preseason, I write down this dude's faster than everybody, and like ended up taking him everywhere. And that really was one of my, I guess you could say, my claims to fame for my fantasy career.
Me this year with Puka, like I was just with Puka Nakua, I was just like watching everything he was doing, and then especially after week 1, when people were questioning if it was a fluke or not, I was just going back and watching the catches and the usage, and I'm like, this is not a fluke. These are 15 targets, and this guy was making it happen. It wasn't just like what was that years ago? Remember Ogletree for the Dallas Cowboys?
Yeah,
huge week 1, and everybody went nuts on the waiver wire, and I was like, this guy's for real. And just going back and watching every play that he made, I'm like, this is something special happening right now. Like this is that rare time in fantasy where you can probably get a possible league winner in week 1.
Yeah, it's just amazing how he went undrafted in so many. But then again, that was before most people knew that Cooper Kupp was going to be down.
Yep.
But as a Lions fan, this. Stafford finds his one guy that he can rely on, and he will just pepper him with targets. That's for sure.
I don't know. I just think this is the changing of the guard year over there for the Rams. It kind of reminds me of when with the Texans when they went from Andre Johnson to DeAndre Hopkins, and most of the guys in the league are still banking on Andre being the guy, and it switched over. And I feel like so many people are saying, "Oh, Puka's fine." But when Kupp comes back, I mean, I have him in most of my leagues, and I'm just waiting for that week when Kupp comes back just to go buy him low with all those panic people who are ready to get rid of him. And I think this is a year-long thing, so I'm pretty pumped about it. But yeah.
That's a good concept for me too, because I was only able to get him on one of my waiver wire claims for my leagues. Yeah, I should start making a trade for him right when they announce Cooper's coming back. Or Kupp's coming back. Go make some trade offers.
Infinity Gauntlet. I got him in every league but like 2, and I'm planning on going for it. I mean, once this podcast come out and my friends listen to it, this might ruin my plan. But
well, just don't share it with them yet. Wait to share it with them till after Kupp comes back.
Exactly. I can wait a couple of weeks to show off. So.
Yeah, I think so actually now that I'm thinking about it, this is not this week. It will be next Wednesday is when it releases, so the 27th. Yep. Which I think is the day before the Lions go into Lambeau Field for Thursday Night Football. So by then we'll be only a day away from being 3-1. But we'll talk about that in the future, which is actually, here we go. Nice segue. You get to ride this DeLorean. That's what we're going to do all day long today.
Me and my kids, the big DeLorean fans. I saw it on your podcast art. And I was like, this is great. All right. He's a Back to the Future fan. I can talk to him.
Yeah, actually, that's the concept of the original show, and it was actually the Football History Dude. I started that back in 2018. Go back in time. The theory was go back in time and learn about the history of the gridiron, one episode at a time, whether it was an interview or whatever, or individual basis. And I always wanted to do fantasy football, but I was going to be the fantasy football dude, like the fantasy football dudes you work with. Yep. And I even told him this, but then I decided, I'll be the Football History Dude. So, same concept, but that's you and me are going back in this DeLorean for various reasons. The first time we're going to stop and we're going to go back to the first, I don't know, either memory you have or like either playing fantasy football or just kind of being introduced to us. Like what do you recall your first memory there?
All right. Well, I did not get involved until like 2010, 2011. I was one of those guys that I used to go to my buddy Fitzy's house and watch football on Sundays. And when I got engaged and married, we'd have football Sunday at my house. And I felt like it was the football purist in me that didn't want fantasy to ruin it, And it absolutely did ruin it. But now I'm addicted. It's all over for me. Now it's life to me. But I held off for a while, and then in 2010, I was about to get married, and my wife's friends, husbands, and stuff. I was trying to find a way for us to bond and hang out, get to know each other and stuff. So I thought, all right, I know they play fantasy, so I said, oh well, start a fantasy league or whatever. And then it was over, though. Then once that one league started, it was just like, give me more. And then I was just totally addicted. But that was my first memory of it, was just I kind of was reluctantly getting into it just for a way of like a certain group of guys to get along and bond over something. And that league's still going now. It's like my favorite league to be in. Like it's become just 10 guys. We get together once a year. It's a whole party, beers, wings, like it's send the kids away, for a night, and it's awesome. But yeah, I was one of those dudes for a while that was like, I'm sure you've met a couple of them. Like, it's going to ruin football. It's going to ruin football for me, and it enhances it. But man, it's tough. It's hard to look at football the same again once you get into fantasy.
No, I mean I can relate myself. It actually ruined a little bit of my Detroit Lions fandom just because of the fact that when you're watching the game, and of course when they're losing, I mean, you've seen this so much, then I'm focusing more on my fantasy team. So I'm trying to the past couple years even like keep the phone down, maybe commercial breaks, stuff like that, and look at my scores. But yeah, no, it can even ruin your fandom. And I have to give a shameless plug now. This is in the promo for our Tailgate Fantasy Sports History Network Listener League, which is something that's kind of their mantra, is to put the word fan back into fantasy football, where you pick like you pick 3 players from your favorite team every week, but you always have your team. So like I'm always the Detroit Lions. The first week I had Montgomery, Sun God, and Goff maybe, or Hutchinson, because you have to always switch it up. So like this week, for instance, I picked Gardner Johnson because I got a power up. So it's just a way to be able to still root for your team. It's a free to play. So if anybody listening there, doesn't matter that the season already started, you can join Tailgate Fantasy, our Sports History Network Listener League. It's sportshistorynetwork.com/tailgate, and it'll take you right there for all the details and everything. But that brings me to you. So you said something about 10 guys. We get to get their beers and wings and have a good draft. I mean, you get kind of almost like the opposite of the homer. So like, were you able to pick Lions without having to reach throughout your days?
Oh yeah. I mean, even still, I mean, the faith that I have in like Jameson Williams coming back is far more. I got him in the last round of that draft. That was a live draft, and I was the 10 pick. So the last pick of the draft, Jameson Williams, where I feel like for what I think his talent is going to be is ridiculous to get him there. It's a big bench, 6-person bench, 3 wide receivers, 2 flexes. So it's a pretty big roster. But yeah, I mean, right off the bat, in all the leagues I'm in, especially like that league, everyone knows their stuff really good. There's really not anybody that's going to make it easy for you. But like in certain leagues, like work leagues that I've done and stuff, you just know, like back, especially with Tom Brady, you're like, you know what? Someone's going to pick Tom Brady in the first or second round, and I'm going to get something awesome to fall to me. But yeah, but the Lions thing, no one's ever jumping on the Lions at all. So, I mean, I got every Lion I wanted spread out through all of my teams. I think I have at least every piece of that offense. I feel bad for my Montgomery team this week, but yeah. But yeah, it's easy to do it because everyone here is just jumps on the Patriots. There's always going to be those guys that go for the homer pick, and you just wait for them and take advantage of it.
Yeah, that is the downfall sometimes. Going back to that tailgate fantasy, is like a lot of times I don't get my players in my home leagues because of I'm gonna stick to the board typically. I mean, I'll go reach a little bit. I mean, it falls sometimes. Like this year, it kind of felt perfect in the second round. If you had like the turn, I was able to get like Sun God, for instance, at the turn, so that kind of worked out. But yeah, most of my leagues, I don't get my Lions because they're always taken too early. But yeah. I'm just telling you what, with all these defensive injuries that they're starting to pile up, they might be in a lot of shootouts like they were with the Seahawks. I mean, they had like 3 of their starters on defense go down this week.
Yeah, I'm afraid. I actually took their defense this week because I was thinking with some injuries on the Seattle offensive line, I thought Hutch was just going to eat up, but didn't really work out that way. I got a big fat 0 for my Lions defense.
No, they got out coached is the way I look at it, unfortunately. Yeah, and Pete Carroll got in there and he took that victory. They couldn't get pressure. It was just unfortunate. All that hype. I knew quite a few people that went to the game. Just how loud it was in there. The excitement and all that stuff. So it's just next week we got it, man. We have Bijan Robinson coming to town. We'll show him the real offensive rookie of the year. Sam Laporta instead of Jahmyr Gibbs. We'll figure it out. We'll get it going and everything. But okay, back to fantasy football though. So okay, we're gonna get into another one. You kind of gave me one of your favorite calls, I guess you could say, your greatest calls, and it's just this year with Puka. What about going back in time? Any of your other, I don't know, great calls that you've made, draft picks or trades or otherwise?
I've been having a lot of luck with the Mr. Irrelevant, like last year, the Jamal Williams of the drafts. I love giving people those picks. Like, it doesn't sound exciting when you pick them, but just like pick them, put them in your flex spot, forget about it. Like last year, that was mine for last year, and I was just so pumped to like how many people I'm sure when you're in the fantasy world and you're giving advice, people love to tell you when you're wrong. But when you have people tell you, you're right. I kept saying to people, I'm like, just get Jamal Williams in the end. They're like, Jamal Williams, he's just going to be a backup. And like, he is going to be a touchdown machine this year. And everyone who took my advice, I was so happy at how the positive feedback was. Like, that's my favorite thing, just giving like the last pick that it might not be the sexiest pick, but when it hits and you're just like, I got this person for like nothing, then that's awesome. I mean, I got Jameson, like I said, last round. I told everybody else, I'm like, who cares? If it's 6 weeks, I don't care. Trust me, that 7th week, you're going to be happy. Like, get them. And the people that listen to me, hope it works out the same way for me. I mean, I'm bound to be wrong sooner or later, but so far I've been good with that Mr. Irrelevant pick of the fantasy draft every year.
Yeah, which ends up being really putting yourself up like this whole Puka this year and everything. I mean, that's about it. Or did you take him earlier and not your last round?
I had him. I think I took him a couple times in the last round, but I mostly telling people everyone's asking about Puka. I did a video about it, just saying 15 targets don't lie. I tell everyone, I'm like, if you have the number 1 waiver, use it on him. Fab, I kept telling people, I'm like, spend $20 on him. They're like, that's crazy. I'm like, telling you this guy is going to be a league winner, especially if you're thin a wide receiver. And I had so many people writing to me like that was nuts. And, I'm strutting my stuff now after week 2 because I'm looking kind of right now. But I was just like, I don't care. Like, to me, it's you can win a league by a move you made in week 1 just as much as a waiver wire person you can pick in week 11. You never know when that right person is going to come. And sometimes it happens in week 1. It did with Julius Thomas, I remember, tight end, within that year. It was week 1, and you had to go and get him. If you had him, he definitely led a lot of people to victory that year. And I just knew Puka was that guy. And as much as I told you I like when I give people advice and they ask me for advice and they take it, I like the people that I give advice to also that give me a lot of crap. Because it's so much more fun to screenshot that just so I can come back to it months later and comment back on their Twitter account. Like, how'd this age for you, But hey, I'm a good guy, but sometimes fantasy's a warfare and you got to be a wise ass. So, but yeah, that's been my guy this year. But this honestly just being involved with the fantasy community is, as you know, it's just like you get involved with the right people. It's such a good community, and I love having people to bounce things off of. Right when I first started off, I felt like I was more of like an independent type guy, just trying to think of who do I like this week. But now I get this whole network of people that we just bounce ideas off of and stuff. So it's been a lot less of just my ideas or my hunch just on things, and just working off of people now, which has been pretty awesome.
Yeah, I want to ultimately get to that too, but before we get there, let's go back one more time in the DeLorean and do the Mulligan one. Like, what's the big pick there, the one you were really boasting about, and you're like, oh man, I wish I would have told them somebody else, or however you want to word that one.
The Mulligan as in someone who worked out, or?
Oh, Mulligan, so you get to do it over. Like, you get to repick the player, or whatever you want to call it, and you get to do something different.
So I forget what year it was. Do you remember what year it was exactly? Because I can never remember years where Andrew Luck was the number one quarterback all year until he got a big fat goose egg in the finals. I forget what that was. Yeah, but I
don't know.
It's always just called the Andrew Luck year. I can't remember what year it was. I'm sure somebody will hear this and tell me, but I'm not even going to guess it because I'll probably be wrong. But I remember I got so many trade offers like for Andrew Luck, and people just begging me for him. And if I took like a bag of potato chips and a Blake Bortles, if you don't know anybody, I would have won the finals. But I denied everything. I'm like, I'm usually the guy that's like, everything's on the table for a trade for the right price. Nothing's sacred. If you're going to pay for the person what I want, then I'll trade anybody. I'll trade Justin Jefferson if you're going to pay me right for him. But this Andrew Luck one, I would not budge. And I had the best regular season of my life that season, and just shot everybody down for Andrew Luck, and just to see him get 0 points, get pulled out of the game against the Dallas Cowboys. And I lost to my friend Joe in that finals, and to this day, he has that smack talk over me, and I hate it because he's got that, and that's a league that I'm not in anymore. But he still has this, walks up to me and he's like, let's talk about Andrew Luck. And I'm like, I don't want to talk about Andrew Luck still. But if I just accepted any of those trades, because all those quarterbacks got at least 10 points that week, and I lost my 6 points with Andrew Luck getting me 0 points. And that not accepting any of those trades, there was so many of them, just haunts me so bad. Despite how much I win now, that will always haunt me till the rest of my fantasy life.
Isn't it funny how sometimes we remember more of the bad things than all of the great things that could have happened, just like how in real life it does?
It's so true. I mean, when you win in fantasy, especially, you're like, okay, good, I expected to win. But when you lose, it's just soul crushing, like you can make it to 5 finals and you'll remember that 1 or 2 that you lost instead of the 3 that you won,
Yeah, as we're sitting here, I'm going to check and see how the Browns are doing, and I just need Nick Chubb. And okay, so now I'm down by 7 in my main league. I need the Saints. Okay, so I have the Saints defense, and
off the field, I heard.
Yeah, that's what I saw before we hopped on. I'm just curious if he's actually going to come back, because if not, I'm probably done. So I don't think the Saints are going to score 9 more points or whatever it is, because. But we'll see.
I'll tell you, it's the guy right before I got on. I'm playing this guy with Nick Chubb, and he just was doing a whole lot of doing his little glory dance about Nick Chubb to me. So all the listeners out there, Dave Chesna did this to you by boasting too early about Nick Chubb. He did this. This one person. He put this bad karma on Nick Chubb by talking smack way too early on a Monday night. So there it is. It's out there in the universe, and that's payback, right?
Well, I can say thanks a lot, Dave, because that's a guy I need to win too. And Chubb I took him number 2 overall, and it's a standard scoring league, mind you not. Otherwise, I would, because McCaffrey went first. I really, looking back, I'm like, man, I wish I would have taken a receiver, of course. But, I was like, man, standard league, because that league, I know it's all high testosterone. They're all going to go after running backs, and there's going to be receivers on the way back. I was able to get CeeDee Lamb and Garrett Wilson, which looked great for a while, and then I got Mark Andrews at number 4. So I was going into this season thinking I was going to be doing some stuff, but then of course Andrews doesn't play. Garrett Wilson loses Rodgers. He gets lucky in one play. I didn't even put him in. I had stupid Josh Kelly in instead of Zach Wilson, or not Zach Wilson, but what's the other one? Garrett Wilson.
I mean, the problem that I have is, since I started doing the whole fantasy football dad thing, I'm helping so many people on Sundays right up to the minute. that I sometimes forget to go look at my own lineups now. And I want these people to know how much I'm giving to them here because I neglect. I talked Puka to everybody this week and left him on the bench in one of my lineups against said Dave, and that's why I'm losing right now. And it's like here I am sitting in front of my phone doing all the fantasy football dad minute, telling everybody to do it, and then I don't even get in on time to put them in for my own lineup. So,
that's dedication to your listeners. So there you go.
Yeah. They appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, okay. So, I mean, you gave me that perfect segue, professional and everything. We'll take the DeLorean back. Okay. So 2010, you start getting into fantasy football all the way up until now. Of course, the pinnacle on fantasy football origin stories, but tell me about the timeline of transforming into the fantasy football dad.
So obviously as a father, I was, you spend a lot of time just kind of not doing your hobbies. And I was playing fantasy, but I used to love to write and I used to that was kind of my passion. And I got to a point where I wasn't doing a lot of the stuff that I wanted to do for me anymore, which happens a lot when you're a father and mother, parent in general, and want to do the job correctly. But after a while, I was like, I got to get some kind of outlet for me to just to enjoy just my own little selfish hobby in this world for myself. And I thought, I'm going to start writing half dad, half fantasy football article. I said, I don't know who's going to read it. I only had 50 followers. This was of September last year. So I just changed my name. It was, I don't even know my name. I forget what the hell my Twitter name was then. I said, I'm the fantasy football dad. And I was shocked it wasn't taken. And I wrote I used to write to Trent on the fantasy football dudes, throw a plug in for them at TFF dudes. And I just said, hey, I've had conversations with you about fantasy before. I said, I'm trying to write an article. Would you be maybe retweet it for me if I get it together? And he pretty much said, well, just send me what you got. We're looking for an article writer. I said, oh, that's awesome. So I just sent him over there, sent it right over to him, and he complimented the hell out of it, and I couldn't believe it. Next thing you know, I'm just writing articles for this podcast that has thousands of listeners, and it was crazy because I went from 50 followers to 100 followers with 1,000 followers to coming on different podcasts and stuff. And last year, I supremely burnt myself out doing the fantasy thing, just going from, I went from 50 followers to 7,000 followers. And I was just killing myself to the point that I just kind of had to step away from it for a little while. And I was with the dude for a while. And then I made a bonehead decision to go to another company for a while, which I won't say anything about because I don't like to speak ill of any company, but it didn't work out. But it was kind of a dumb decision and me getting a little too big for my britches, I think. But I stepped back and I talked to Trent over at Fantasy Football Dudes. I'm like, yeah, I'd like to just take a step back and like to do, dad moves again. So I'm doing that now and then with them, but not killing myself like last year. Just when it hits me, I write it, they put it out. I love doing it. And I was playing with the idea of just doing, do I want to do a podcast? Do I want to do a space? And I dabbled in everything. I like to go on podcasts, but I didn't actually want my own podcast because my schedule is insane with my 4 boys. So I just don't have time to commit to doing it every week. And me and my son did a Twitter space for a little while. And then we ended up, he's super busy playing football and school. He's a junior. And just me with all the kids' activity. I was talking to Trent again at the dudes. I'm like, I got to do something just to stay out there. He's like, just record a minute video a couple times a week. He's like, you'll be surprised at how well it does. So I'm like, all right. So now if I think of something random, something with my kids, just stupid thought about football, I'll record a minute of it. Started calling it the Fantasy Football Dad Minute. Before game times on Sundays, I'll take questions, answer everybody's questions on it. And that's gone over way better than I thought it was going to go. So, I mean, I guess I owe Trent a lot here. So he's been a big support for me. But last year it was literally me sitting around wanting to write an article. And now it's become this thing where, you get, thousands of people writing you start-sit questions and, some of them writing you hate mail on Sunday night if you're not right every time. But it's crazy to me how much it's grown. And it's, just from being involved with the community, part of it, you have to enjoy it still. I feel like for a while there, it got so crazy that I wasn't having fun with it anymore, and I was just starting to become like another job. And my wife was like, this year, she's like, "You're not doing this again if I'm going to hear you complain the whole football season about doing this." So what I'm doing now, just writing the article when I can and just doing the Fantasy Football Dad Minute videos, have just been going over huge with everyone following me, and I'm back to having fun doing it again. And that's really what I wanted to do. So sometimes I think you got to take a step back to take a step forward. Wow, I couldn't sound more like Danny Tanner if I tried there. Huh?
Yeah, well, you did say something about, Dad Minute and everything like that, so it kind of all fits in there. Speaking of, okay, so the Fantasy Football Dad and the minutes there, or then even the Sunday. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you, follow you, send you start questions, whatever it is, how would they do so?
Just reach out to me on Twitter, X, if you want to call it that, at TFF Dad. I'm on it every day, but Saturdays and Sundays, if you reach out to me, DM me, ask me your questions, I'll get you one of the minutes. I'll tag you in it, and you'll get your own special video with an answer and your name mentioned in it. So that's how you reach me. Just get me on Twitter, and we'll have fun. And I love interacting with people. It's like my favorite thing, because now it's back to just talking fantasy again, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, having fun with it. That's the beauty of it. That's why we got into this. And let's do something a little bit different. We're going to take that DeLorean again that I'm looking at over there, but we're going to go like Back to the Future 2 style. We're not going to try to create Biff Towers or anything like that, but like you get to go into the future 5, 10, 20 years. You pick a number and either what you would like to see in the fantasy football space or something that you maybe are predicting where the space might go in the future.
What I'd like to see right now, like I've been working a lot with the Saged Up network, and I like right now that you can go on the way Twitter Spaces are working and just the interaction. When I first felt like when I came onto this whole thing, it was fantasy football was very competitive. I felt like where people were knocking each other a lot, like crap on this guy's advice just so they can go get my advice, right? And my whole thoughts on things since the beginning was that's not how you go about it. Like you respect each other. You're all trying to do the same thing. And I feel like since I've been involved with this community, there's a space I go on, Straight Tipping it's called. And he's got a whole community of guys, and you're all just supporting each other, and you're giving advice together. And even if you disagree on it, it's treated respectfully. And like I've already mentioned the dudes 100 times, or even like me being on here and you having me on here. Just I like to see the fantasy community more so just the actual activity of fantasy football. I love to see everyone working together, and it's kind of transformed. Unlike everything else in this world lately, it's transformed into something more harmonious, And I love seeing that because it's a great community to be in, and I'd like to see that continue to grow. Because when I first got in there, it was very big as far as, I would have a thought about something, and someone with 3,000 followers back when I had 30 followers would be like, well, what do you know? You got 30 followers. Well, now it's like, well, you got 30 followers. I have this many thousand. Send me your article. I'll retweet it, or I'll read it and work with you. And for me, I just like to see that continue to grow because it's an awesome thing. And like I said, in this world nowadays, you see less and less of people extending out their hand to help other people and stuff. And this community is so rich in that right now. And I'm so glad to see something in this world go in that direction of support and not just individualism.
Yeah, it's almost kind of like, I mean, this is going off not fantasy football, but it's funny how you say that because we have the technology to become more connected and become more collaborative, yet then it kind of takes people further away sometimes. But bringing it back into the collaboration and everything, and like a family, I got to use that family version because of the fantasy football dad. So what about as we leave here, give, we'll call it last words of fantasy knowledge nuggets, whatever it is, but like for the upcoming season and how to enjoy fantasy football through the lens of maybe a father and the fantasy football dad.
Honestly, for me, get your kids involved with it. I mean, not so much, I know a lot of people play for money, maybe not include the money in the gambling side of it, but my oldest son started when he was 8 years old, and he's started off